Hello! So today I am going to be talking about Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, the second book in the First Law series. I'm going to start this review by saying I get it. I get it now. The First Law series is a very beloved series of books. I mean, people absolutely adore them. And whilst I thoroughly enjoyed the first book, after that first book, I wasn't quite seeing what everybody else was. And this was mainly down to what I would say is my misguided expectations of what these series of books were. I was expecting something a lot more darker, and I was expecting the first novel to have a lot more plot. Honestly, the first book is just an entire book of exposition. Good lord, does Joe Abercrombie capitalise on this in this book. Before They Are Hanged is a much richer novel in absolutely every single way. I wanted more plot and I wanted things to be a little bit darker, and oh boy did I get it. The tone and writing style is very much the same as the first book, and thank you very much to all the people who commented letting me know that the style and the way these books are written pretty much stays the same all the way through. That was one of the things I found a little bit jarring. I expected it to be a little bit grittier and not sort of like bouncy and light within its prose. But that tone is still the same, but it definitely gets a lot darker. And it is just so much fun. So much fun. It's a rip-roaring ride of, you've got adventure in there, you've got journeys, you've got quests, you've got war, you've got backstabbing, you've got political intrigue, you've got political manoeuvring. This book has it all. So what's the basic plot of Before They Are Hanged? Now, I'm going to try and keep things spoiler-free as far as this book is concerned, but whether I can be completely spoiler-free of the first book, I just don't know. I'm going to try and keep both the first book and this book as spoiler-free as possible, but as soon as I start talking about the basic plot of this book, it's gonna give away things in the first book, no matter how hard I try. So it's entirely on you right now whether you want to continue. I will, of course, a little bit later on do my overview of this book. I'll leave a timestamp here so you can sort of jump to that if you want my kind of like final thoughts, which will be very, very quick. So I'm gonna not spoil this book to the best of my ability, but the first book, it's probably gonna get spoiled a little bit. So the novel continues to follow kind of four main storylines. We have Logan Ninefingers, who by the end of the first novel has joined Bayaz and his gang, and in this novel they go on their quest. They are going to the edge of the world in search for a rare and powerful artifact. Superior Glokta is sent to defend the city of Dagoska. He is defending it from the Gurkish Empire while at the same time dealing with internal corruption inside the city walls, inside the council. Glokta's sections in the first book were my favourite. Glokta's sections in this book are also up there with my absolute favourite. His story has so much going on. He is dealing with so many things. And as always, Glokta's internal monologue is never not hilarious. He has some one-liners that I was just laughing my ass off at. He is such an incredible character. Without a doubt, I think probably my favourite character I've read this year. Yeah, Glokta's sections are an absolute blast. We also get the perspective from Jazal Lufar, who was probably one of my least favourite characters from the first book. Not because he was badly written, I really enjoyed all his sections, but he is just a bit of a dickhead. And I predicted in my last review that I think he is going to go on a massive journey. And we are really starting to see that happen within this novel. So basically, he has joined Logan Ninefingers, Bayaz and his gang on the quest for the artifact. And we really see him transform from this sort of selfish nobleman into a much more individual, self-aware human being. There's a lot of personal growth with Jazal, and also he undergoes some very big physical challenges. Now, I do have one regret from my review of the first book, The Blade, itself, and that is that I missed out a lot of the side characters. There were so many side characters in the first novel, and they just advance within this one. The thing is, I just don't have the time when I'm doing these reviews to go as in-depth as I need to with work and all those kind of things, so I try and keep it as focused as possible. But there are loads of side characters. You've got Colonel West and his sister. My only dislike of this book as far as characters is concerned is that we don't get really any time with Colonel West's sister. She just appears sort of at the end, and I spent a lot of the novel thinking, are we ever going to go back to her? Are we ever going to visit her? And that's the only real shame, and I will get into that in my dislikes, but it's a very small one. I didn't even mention her really in my first review. I just said that she was a love interest of Jazal. And Colonel West goes on a massive journey in this book. He meets up with Logan Ninefingers' old gang. You got Dogface, you got Three Trees, you got this gang, and they're all brought to life so beautifully in this book, and they have their own individual storyline that really comes to life. So yeah, Colonel West, his growth, the military tactics, him joining the gang of Northerners, Logan Ninefinger's old gang, that is also a really, really excellent sort of advancement of the characters and of all the different threads that are just spreading out across this series. Now, I'm going to try not to spoil anything, but Colonel West throughout this novel is dealing with this sort of inner violence and anger he has. He's proved in the first novel that he is smart and more than capable of leading armies, and he has proved to all his superiors that he can get the job done. But because he is very low birth, a lot of the people around him don't respect him, and this is sort of built up an anger that we can see building throughout the first book. And what I loved about his growth and his arc throughout this one is that we really see that sort of the inner demons and the sort of stress of his situation and what he's had to live with, and his father was very abusive and all this sort of, we see it all building up. And yeah, and how it sort of like manifests throughout this book is just done really, really well. And there is a moment, I'm not going to say anything, but there's a moment with a member of royalty that I was just like, whoa! I was like, okay. I mean, I was secretly happy about it because that, you know, I can't say anything, but I was like, yes, good. But, oh my God, this is so cryptic. Anyway, if you know, you know. The setting and aesthetic of this novel is still a grim, war-torn world with a rich, medieval-inspired landscape. We explore the treacherous wilderness of the north to besieged cities in the south and to ancient ruins on the edge of the world. And that's it. That's kind of ish, not really close to, but as good as I'm going to do today on what this novel is about. So let's dive straight into what did I like and what didn't I like. What I liked. I absolutely loved the character development in this one. Every single character is so richly brought to life, and the journey that they go on and what they go through and how we see them change is just explored and displayed brilliantly. One of my favourite aspects of the first novel was the dialogue. I thought the dialogue was brilliant, just really, really good. The sort of sayings and phrases of different characters and geographically where they're from has been so well thought through. There's just like one-liners in here that had me laughing my arse off. But also, I never thought that this book could get so philosophical. There were a few times that I had to stop. I did this one on audiobook, and I just had to stop and take a moment to think about a line a character had said. And I never, if you had asked me from the first book, I never thought I would be thinking on a kind of more deeper philosophical level with this novel than I did. And yeah, I don't know, just it really impressed me in that way. One thing I really liked about what this novel is exploring is the idea of honour, and how you can't really turn honour on and off like a tap. Once you commit to it, it's something you really need to commit to for life. And we have this kind of idea of all of our different characters hold that kind of idea and what honour means to them in so many varying different degrees. And I absolutely loved how this novel was exploring that at its core. It's really, really interesting to think about how much damage the idea of honour alone has done when it comes to war, when it comes to kind of political leanings. It really, yeah, I just did a great job. Another thing that I really liked is that this novel is more grittier, is a little bit darker. It still has its same sort of prosal tone going on, which is absolutely fine. Now I know that's what this book is. I'm not expecting something different. I can just sit back and have an absolute brilliant time. But it is darker, it is grittier. Everything is getting just a little bit more serious. Things are escalating. And yeah, and I really loved how it isn't afraid to sort of, it doesn't pull its punches. It goes there in moments. And yeah, sometimes I'd wish it go a little bit further, but I'll get onto that. But yeah, it's just what I want it to be. Oh, it's just really getting to the sort of fantasy and the sort of grimness that I really, really enjoy. Another thing I really loved is the humour. The humour is so good. It is brilliant. Again, back with the dialogue, there are so many funny moments in this novel. So many moments where I was just laughing to myself. The characters are just, some of them are hilarious. And it's really joyful in that moment to get this kind of lovely balance of the humour and the sort of like the grimness of the world. I think Joe Abercrombie in this novel has found that blend even better than he did before. Really, God, he's very good. He's very good. I did have some comments on my last video in which some people were like, I don't like his writing, I don't like what he does at all, and that's absolutely fine, but I just don't think I can really agree with that. I think what he does so well. And the final thing that I really, really loved, I'm going to lump these two things in together, is the world building is still absolutely on point. He is bringing this world more to life. We are getting more of the world. We are getting more of the lore and the history. Just absolutely excellent. And of course, the one thing that I thought was amazing about the first novel is Joe Abercrombie knows how to write an action scene. And we get more action in this novel, so much more action in this novel, like all good sequels should. It brings it in, you know, it just doubles up on everything. And the action sequences and the way they were written, I was never unclear as to where a character was, what was going on. And what was really good is the way that he brings sort of the setting of where characters are into the action. So the setting and the landscape plays just a bigger part in the action sequence as what the characters are doing themselves, and that is always a massive plus. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different in this review. It's not massive, it's just a little add-on, and I'll see whether I bring that to all my reviews in the future. You can let me know. But what I'm going to talk about is like my favourite scene, my favourite section of this book. So I'm going to kind of like look at the books I review and think about what is the one moment that I just really stands out to me. And for me, that's a moment in which Logan Ninefinger's journey and his gang, they sit round a campfire to sort of have a discussion and a story, just to sort of relax, and they start talking about scars. It's a reflective conversation they're having that very naturally sort of turns to this root of both physical and mental scars they all wear. Logan is very much talking about his physical scars, the scars of the battles and the injuries that he's had. He goes into detail about all of the scars on his body, all of the battles he's been within, all of the lives he's taken, and how he wears them and what they have done to make him the man he is today. This is also the first moment in this series so far in which the character of Pharaoh, she starts to open up. She's very closed off normally. She's, you know, very sort of angry individual. And then we start to understand why she is the way she is. And we get to learn that she has experienced sexual abuse. She has been sold, beaten, raped, used her body for profit, for gain, all these types of things. And we start to get a real understanding of why she is the way she is. What I also loved about this moment, really loved, is Jezal is sort of sat there and he's been through some things by this point in the novel, but he is understanding, really truly understanding how privileged his life has been and what other people have had to endure. And it's the moment that we actually see his character start to see everyone else in a different light. We start to see his kind of selfishness and his very narrow worldview. We start to see those cracks appear, and it's done in such a gentle, beautiful way. Now, as much as I might be saying that this feels like it's a scene that's just been dumped in there to sort of give us all the sort of backstory of everyone, I know it sounds like that, and on paper it kind of is, but it is done in such a way that feels so earned from everything we've been through. And it's not like it happens really early on in the first book. You know, we've been through a lot with these characters until we get this moment of reflection, and it is so much better for it. We also get Brother Longfoot, who comes in with his typical jokes that he always does within this little gang. And normally, you know, this isn't a very, like, laughy, jokey sort of gang of people. So I always find it quite funny. He always tries to bring that humour when he gets a little bit uncomfortable, and it always seems to get shut down. And then we have a moment from Bayaz, who looks a lot more philosophically at kind of scars in general, the scars of all of the people in their gang, but also kind of like the scars of what we wear in order to survive, and how those scars are going to help them get through what they need to achieve. And yeah, I don't know, it was just, that scene just really stands out to me. If you have any of your own personal favourite scenes from this novel, please, yeah, comment below. But that was one that I just really, everything clicked for me. What didn't I like? So I've got two very small negatives. Other than that, I absolutely love this novel. So as you could probably tell already, it's been somewhat of a gush fest. But I do have two small sort of negatives about this book. Number one, I do feel like it could be darker. I know, I think it's just, I had a commenter, I can't remember their name, on the last video, who said that maybe maybe myself as a reader, I've become a little bit desensitized, and that it's really subjective on what people find kind of like dark or not. And I think I've maybe read so many graphic horror novels in my youth, so much really dark stuff, that yeah, things that might faze other people maybe don't faze me, and many readers like me, maybe. But I just want things, I think moments could be pushed further. I just want to feel that shift in tone even more. I want to be sort of laughing and joking, and in the next moment, like, my jaw dropped and feeling like the shivers on my arms and sort of like, oh my God, that's disgusting, I did not see that coming. I want that more from these books. It's starting to give it to me in this novel. It is starting to get there, but it hasn't really pushed it for me yet. And obviously that's not an issue with the book. The book isn't trying to be that. That's me wanting it to be something it's not, but it's still something I feel like, for me personally, would improve this book. And my next small little negative is the character Ardy, who is Colonel West's sister. She is Jezal's love interest, and in the first book, they spend a lot of time together. We get a lot of backstory on Ardy. We find out about her growing up with her abusive dad. We get so much, and we build up that sort of romance. We build up their love for each other, and it's such an intrinsic part of kind of like Jezal's journey and his separation from her. And she's sort of just left back at the Union City while everyone sort of goes off. And honestly, we don't get to see her until like the last 100 pages, if not less than that. Like, it's really, really, really late on that she comes into it. And the entirety of me reading this book, I kept going, I wonder what's happening to Ardy. I wonder what's happening to Ardy. Where's Ardy? Why is no one mentioning Ardy? Why have we just abandoned Ardy? What is going on? That was happening in my head. And I don't like that. I don't want to be doing that constantly throughout the entirety of the book. So that was the main thing for me. Just a few more mentions. I just don't think you can spend that much time on a character in the first novel to then just deny us anything from her, barely any mention of her, until the very end of the second. It was just something that didn't really vibe with me. But regardless of those two small negatives, this is still an absolutely excellent book. I loved it. I think it's a 4.5, I think, possibly a 5-star. I don't think it can be a 5-star because of me constantly wanting to know what had happened to Ardy. It was just something that kind of niggled at me the whole way through, so I don't think it can be 5. So I'm going to go like a 4 to a 4.5 is absolutely where this book is at. It is it's brilliant fun. It's so much fun, and I get it now. Honestly, I get it. So I'm 2 books in now, and I can safely say that I would recommend these books to people who are fans of dark fantasy, of excellent, excellent character development, and characters that live in the grey area. If you want lots of backstabbing, political intrigue, wars, war tactics, adventure, humour, all of those things that make up a great dark fantasy, this has got them all. And yeah, I would recommend it to anyone who is really intrigued. Would I recommend it as a sort of stepping stone into dark fantasy? I think I would. My issue being that first book is all set up, and I think that would put off a lot of people wanting a little bit more plot. But I would safely say that I think you could convert someone into being a dark fantasy reader with the first 2 books alone. If you were able to convince someone to sit down and make sure they did these 2 first books, then they would be in after that. I can probably safely guarantee they would go, yeah, this is a really good time. I do have to apologise because this review has been very rambly. In fact, a lot of my reviews have been very rambly recently. I used to be so good at keeping them under 10 minutes. And yeah, I seem to be really failing at that recently. Just the ramble, the waffle, this stupid waffle. But anyway, have you read this book? And if so, what did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please let me know in the comments below. And as always, I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying whatever you might be reading. And I'll see you all on the next one.